Patrick O'Rourke writes, what, on your opinion, does Leonardo DiCaprio need to do in order to finally win an Oscar?
Just keep doing what you're doing. I mean, when you consistently crank out excellence like he does in his performances, at some point you're going to win one. But there's nothing you can look. Nothing Leonardo DiCaprio could have done this year would have stopped how good Chiwetel Ejiofor was. I mean, so there's a little bit of luck involved too. So if he just keeps doing great, eventually, like, does anybody here not think he's going to eventually get an Academy Award?
Yeah, he's going to win one eventually. And he's gotten over that hump, because at first there was that whole thing like, oh, he's just a pretty boy, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Even though people hadn't seen What's Eating Gilbert Grape. You know, the whole Titanic thing kind of took over his image, and so people are like, "Oh, that guy from Titanic."
And Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah, so people did not want to vote, but I think he's gotten over that, and I think that was the biggest hurdle for him. So from now on, I think just keep doing what he's doing, and eventually he's going to win one.
I got some career advice. Play an emotionally disturbed fatty, gain about 50 pounds. So just straight up like regular movie, no craziness, no special effects, like emotionally disturbed fat dude. And something emotional that everyone will cry, and then lose that weight, and then win that Oscar.
All right, what's next?
Laurel Tony writes, why do you think blockbusters like superhero or live-action movies don't get a lot of love at the Oscars?
Well, quite often because they don't have much else to them. I mean, look, I've always said there's like 15 different elements that go into making a motion picture, and just because you're really great at 2 or 3 of the elements doesn't mean overall you're the best picture of the year. So let's look at Avengers. Did I think Avengers might have deserved to get squeaked in a year when you could possibly have 10 nominees for Best Picture? Yes, but was I going to make an argument, even though it was my personal favorite film of that year, was I going to argue that it had any business being up for Best Picture? No, because while it did a lot of the things that are important to me really, really super well with the action and the fun and all that kind of stuff, was it a great script? No. Was there great dramatic tension in it? No.
Hulk versus Loki.
Yeah. Was there amazing character development? No. So, I mean, while it was my favorite because it did those things that appeal to me the most, amazingly, it's my favorite, but you'll never hear me make an argument that it should have been nominated for, or won, maybe nominated, but won Best Picture? No. And it wasn't until really Dark Knight. I mean, Dark Knight was the first kind of genre film, the superhero genre, that you could make an argument. I mean, I still don't believe there's any way it should have won Best Picture. But in a year, and it was the last year they had 5 nominees, just 5 nominees for Best Picture. You can make a legitimate, it was the first film of that genre, you can make a legitimate argument that it deserved a nomination. I was cool that it didn't get nominated. I thought I would have put it in the top 10 that year for sure, but I could totally see the arguments that people could make about why it deserved to be in that top 5. But it doesn't happen often. And so it's not that people go, oh, it's a comic book movie, then we're just going to deny it. No, I even think the Academy is willing and waiting to embrace big, massive blockbusters because that would be great for the industry. If Avengers 2 came out and it was like awesome on all the scales, the Academy would love to hold up a film like that and say this is the best film of the year and bring in more oodles of money into the industry.
Right.
But it hasn't happened yet, at least the way I see it. How do you guys think?
I don't think it's gonna happen, really. I mean, unless it's more of like something like a Dark Knight where it's much more serious, because the studios, they're putting a lot of money into these big tentpole movies, and they need to see a return. So they need to hit certain points in the movie. They need, okay, we need all these characters to be in it. They have to do this, 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 and this. And so when you start getting that formula, it's an entertaining formula, but that doesn't mean that it's the best for the story, it's best for the characters, or even best for the acting. I mean, you know, aside from like, you know, with Heath Ledger as Joker, like how many times have you been like, most of the time you're like, oh, that was a good performance, but were you ever blown away from like a superhero performance? Not too often.
No, not often.
Right. Well, I mean, we can count Lord of the Rings, Return of the King. That's like the last kind of like, and that's not even a superhero film, but that's the last kind of like fantasy, action, adventure, superhero something or other, magical powers type movie that ever got a Best Picture nomination.
Yeah.
And that was 10 years ago and won. So, you know, I mean, I think the Academy and the Oscars is really for like dramatic roles, real stories, biopics, stories from the heart, emotional dramas, things like that. And of course, we get things like, you know, a story of survival like Gravity, which is, for all intents and purposes, science fiction. But it has that edge of reality to it, where just the lead role done by Sandra Bullock, another female lead role movie that blew it away at the box office, and also for fans. I mean, that's kind of like what Cate Blanchett was talking about. Like, yeah, I think I really don't think superhero films are gonna get Oscar nominated anytime soon. But why should they? I don't even like. To me, like the Oscars are just. I don't expect horror movies to win Oscars, and nor should they. We already have festivals and awards shows for those kinds of horror films, and we have Comic-Con and a million other comic book conventions where all the true fans of comic book heroes and movies like that can all come together and say, "Wow, we loved Avengers," or "We love Spider-Man." You know, yeah. So I really don't need to feel validated by the Oscars for my love of superhero films or horror or science fiction or fantasy. I've already got all my friends who are into that stuff, and I go to my own conventions. I don't need the Oscars.
See, I think the point you bring up though about Lord of the Rings, I think just proves that. See, there's this misconception that the Academy, the 6,000 voting members, these all 105-year-old white guys who don't want these comic books or these fantasy movies to get any recognition. I think what the Lord of the Rings trilogy showed us is that this Academy is dying to give accolades to genre films if they can show that they're solid. And you know, then The Dark Knight comes along, Best Supporting Actor, it wins. It won one other Technical Academy Award as well. It was nominated a couple times. Didn't get nominated for Best Picture. But you can tell, I believe this Academy is dying for a superhero, genre, science fiction, or fantasy film to come along that they can hold up to the public. But I think we've all pretty much agreed that that film hasn't come yet, at least not since Lord of the Rings or Dark Knight.
I think they're much more open, though, to science fiction
than
they are the superhero genre.
District 9 got nominated for Best Picture.
Avatar
was a big push for... Yeah, why did I not think of Avatar? You're right, exactly. Okay, let's take two more questions and we'll call it a day.
Okay, Louise Zapata writes, should they announce who came in second, third, and fourth?
Nah, no, I don't think so. I think it's great. Say who the winner is, and don't diminish the honor of being an Academy Award nominee by saying, and you came in last.
And also, yeah, rub salt in the wound. I mean, you already lost. Oh, guess what? You're fifth out of
or you were second. You almost won by this small hair.
You lost by one vote.
Out of all the losers, you're the biggest loser.
Right.
Oh yeah,
fifth.
Yeah. You almost had immortal glory, but you lost by 3 votes.
And no one will remember you. I know you were second, but no one will remember it. Yeah, it's like.
Okay, what else?
Cameron L Barnett writes, should Eddie Murphy host the Oscars?
I have no problem with that, actually. The guy's been an Academy Award nominee. He is a pedigree of Hollywood. He's been in some of the most memorable, funny, and iconic and classic comedies of all time. He's shown he can be a real actor. He's one of the greatest stand-up comedians, probably in the top 30 of our generation. I have no qualms about an Eddie Murphy. Now, here's the one thing, though, where I take exception. There was this one year, just a couple of years ago, that X-Men 3 director Brett Ratner was supposed to produce the Oscars. And he just so happened to be having his new film, Tower Heist, starring Eddie Murphy, coming out. And then lo and behold, they announced Eddie Murphy was going to be hosting the Oscars. I took real exception with that. For those reasons. But now here we are a few years later. He's not associated with the producer of the show. If somebody were just to come up and say, Eddie Murphy's going to be hosting the Oscars next year, would I jump up and down about it? No, but I think that's an interesting choice, and I look forward to seeing how he do. What do you guys think?
I wouldn't mind it. I think you do a good job. So
I would love to see Eddie Murphy and Steve Martin co-host.
Oh my
Bowfinger is one of the most underrated,
underappreciated comedies ever.
It's so funny. Like, if you've never seen Bowfinger, see it immediately right now after this show, because it'll make you laugh out loud. It's a beautiful tribute to Hollywood filmmaking. And I mean, Eddie Murphy and Steve Martin, I think, would kill it being co-hosts. So.
Oh, I never even thought about that. Would be awesome.
If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to AMC Movie News on YouTube. It's free and a great way to stay updated with all the latest movie news, and check out our daily show, AMC Movie Talk. Also, don't forget to check us out on Facebook and Twitter to stay in the loop for our special prizes, giveaways, and contests.